So Nathanos was obviously the right hand of Sylvanas. He pretty much was just as guilty as she was in everything she had done. On top of that, Nathanos had an entire cinematic with Tyrande at the start of Shadowlands, almost entirely dedicated to him, and until now, there was no mention of Nathanos. Well, a few months back we got a hint in the Ardenweald cinematic, and now Sylvanas has some voice lines that are hinting at his possible return. So what is going on with Nathanos? What is his excuse? Will he be redeemed? Will he return? And will he be reunited with Sylvanas in the end? Record your raids, arenas, Mythic Plus, or with Squadowy, the app that you just install, and it records itself without a click of a button. Aside from watching your friend's perspective and analyzing your performance, you can see complete encounter stats, spell visualizations, and a bunch of other things. Best of all, it can be done from anywhere, just from the web app. Check out Squadowy completely free with my link in the description. Initially, at the start of Shadowlands, it really seemed like Nathanos is out to have a super big role in the Shadowlands. For over a decade, he was the right hand of Sylvanas and was secretly in love with her, not even so secretly, and he participated in whatever terrible things she had done over the years, and yeah, she had done many. Sylvanas seemed to have some grand vision that we couldn't hope to understand, and Nathanos was also in on this plan. This was even more obvious when Shadowlands began, and Nathanos literally just allowed himself to be found and defeated. The guy obviously stood there openly taunting us, and I'm almost certain he knew that he wouldn't stand a chance against Tyrande, the Night Warrior. That ended up being the case, as he was easily dealt with, and he once again taunted us, saying how he's going to reunite with Sylvanas and how he did pretty much exactly what he had planned. Well, long story short, it is 9.2 almost, and it still hasn't happened, and there are absolutely zero signs of Nathanos, at least concrete ones. Until 9.1 we had no clues, but then when Tyrande and Sylvanas had that little duel in Ardenweald, Tyrande taunted her, saying that, oh, you didn't know, your master is keeping secrets from you. This was a super confusing storyline, as well as foreshadowing that Sylvanas would ultimately betray the jailer. Now, from that point forth, we can only logically deduce what is going on, and I'm almost certain this is in fact the case. Zowal was aware that Sylvanas was having those doubts. I mean, he literally had a portion of her soul, and he probably knew that she was going to betray him. I mean, come on, this guy has like more IQ points than the years he had been in prison, because he's obviously behind everything. So the jailer purposefully kept Nathanos in order to maintain control over her. Just think about it, when Nathanos was defeated, the Machine of Death broke a long time ago, so he was 100% destined to just go to the Maw, which is the place where the jailer had all the control and the place he also wanted to reach. Our completely natural expectation was that Sylvanas and Nathanos will now be his main agents, as he was obviously in on the plan, but turns out Zowal just decided to steal his soul and just keep him hidden. As it was revealed in that cinematic, Sylvanas had no idea that Nathanos even reached the Shadowlands, which I gotta say is kinda strange, and she was visibly shocked that she still hasn't seen him, and Tyrande mentioned that he should be here. I'd go even as far as to say that this might have been the final drop, the trigger that led her to defect. Well, as you're also aware, Jailer saw this coming, threw her soul at her, and caused a state of coma within Sylvanas, which you have been able to observe in that Shattered Legacy cinematic. It is currently a bit vague, but Uther is her personal therapist for some reason that helps her recover her soul and relive her memories, and over time she essentially becomes a part of our crew during the main 9.2 campaign and the main storyline. Of course, it's not like everything is cool now, but over time, things do get a bit better for her. First, she helps us free Anduin, then helps us reforge Eternal Domination, and she says stuff like there will never be a Lich King in Icecrown again. So, in one aspect, she's no longer just pure evil. Well, aside from these voice lines you already know, she also references Nathanos, making this currently the only official reference to him in 9.2, as we only had a little small crumb in 9.1. Along with her character progression and her no longer being the old evil Banshee Queen, her voice lines shift accordingly. The context of these lines is uncertain whether this is a part of some conversation or not, but it seems like that more than likely this is sort of the dialogue that occurs when you click on her repeatedly, and and, you know, just keep inquiring, and she says this stuff. Sylvanas says, not a Banshee Queen, not a Ranger General, but always a Wind Runner. I will never serve. Then she references her two iconic quotes. One is that this world is a prison, and in regards to that she says, yes, we live in prisons of our own making. And in regards to her most iconic quote, what are we if not slaves to this torment? She says, we are more than slaves to our torments. Super cheesy lines that hint at a possible soft redemption, no doubt, but without any context. She also says this: I found you before, my love. I will find you again, no matter how long it takes. This, I'm almost 100% certain that it refers to Nathanos, as I can't imagine what else she could be talking about, but it is kinda confusing, I gotta admit. First, if this really is in the context of dialogue that happens when you click on her, why is she telling us all this stuff as if she's talking to Nathanos directly? However, what is also interesting that this might be the first time she actually acknowledges him. For some reason, I feel like this is going to result in some super cheesy love story, as if she didn't acknowledge his attention before because she was evil and a split soul, but now that the jailer's manipulation is over, she sees him for what he really is. Of course, we don't know the context, but to me this is like deviant art level fan fiction. Regardless, with all this in mind, we've constantly been talking about Sylvanas being redeemed, her excuses or whatever, but the real question is, what exactly is Nathanos' excuse? He pretty much participated in all the stuff Sylvanas did and is about just as guilty. Yet as far as we know, his soul wasn't kept in the jailer's vault as if he had it personally. Are they going to go the route that the jailer did have his soul, or that he was manipulated by Sylvanas, who was in turn manipulated by Zobel? Super confusing, but without a doubt it will be tied to whatever the fate of Sylvanas is by the end of the Shadowlands. What is the most important thing to pull out of this small bit of info is that Nathanos is obviously going to appear at any moment now. I think it is just a matter of time before something is data mined. If that is not the case, I don't see why they would add this line to Sylvanas. However, as far as we know, his soul is actually in the jailer's hands, so the only way for him to be freed is if he gives him up, we steal him, or we defeat the jailer. I feel like the most likely scenario is that Nathanos could be freed once we defeat the jailer, because, big spoiler alert, that actually happens at the end of this patch. The jailer is defeated, you know. Finally. As I had previously speculated, my thoughts are that Zobel knew that Sylvanas has a connection to Nathanos, so he purposefully kept his soul in order to have even more control over the Banshee Queen. Possibly even to let her loose so that she gains our trust, and so that he can pull her back in by blackmailing her with Nathanos' soul. Maybe aside from being moral support and stating the obvious, Sylvanas may actually have some information that we couldn't figure out ourselves, and when she actually does that, Zobel might pull out the Nathanos card to prevent that from happening. Unfortunately though, aside from this single voice line, we don't really have any other information, so at the moment we can only speculate what will happen in 9.2. However, this is without a doubt a really strong hint that Nathanos will finally appear in this expansion. Thank you for watching. Check out Multiranda for Gifts Sylvanas by clicking on the screen, and check out Doran's Academy for videos on real-world history. See you next time.